Ethan Cole never thought he would be standing on the deck of a Seraph royal vessel. He was not a soldier. He was not a famous diplomat. He was just an assistant, the kind of man who carried data pads, fetched water, and tried to look serious when real ambassadors spoke. Yet somehow, through a mix of bad scheduling and worse luck, he had been chosen to represent Earth in a cultural exchange with one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy. The Seraph Empire was old, proud, and more formal than any civilization Ethan had ever studied. Their etiquette manuals were older than most human nations. Unfortunately, the version Earth had given him to study was at least 30 years out of date. He had read it cover to cover during the journey, but the alien phrases felt stiff, the gestures confusing, and the bowing instructions downright dangerous. When he stepped into the grand hall of the Seraph vessel, he felt his heart hammering. Alien banners hung from the high ceiling, glowing with shifting patterns of gold and silver. Guards in ornate armor stood along the walls, their sharp eyes fixed on him. At the far end of the chamber stood Princess Sylara herself. She was tall, graceful, and dressed in ceremonial armor that gleamed like polished obsidian. Her long tail curved behind her, smooth scales catching the light. Her violet eyes narrowed as Ethan approached, and he could already tell that she was not going to be easy to impress. Ethan reminded himself of the bowing instructions. Step forward, cross arms, lower head, hold for 3 seconds. Simple enough, right? He tried. He really did. But halfway through, his foot caught on the hem of his robe. Instead of a graceful bow, he tipped forward like a falling tree, arms flailing, and nearly crashed face first onto the polished floor. The guard stiffened. Princess Sylara gasped. Ethan barely caught himself, wobbling back upright. His face burned with embarrassment. He opened his mouth to apologize, but then let out a nervous laugh instead. "Guess that was not in the manual," he said, still half bent. Princess Sylara's expression was supposed to stay cold and regal. She was trained for this. She was meant to be the perfect image of Seraph dignity. But her traitor of a tail had other plans. The tip gave a little flick, then another. Then before she could stop it, her tail began to wag softly behind her, like a banner in the wind. Sylara froze. Her face darkened to a deeper violet shade, the Seraph sign of a blush. She whipped her tail around and clutched it with both hands, glaring at him with wide eyes. "Do not stare, human," she snapped, her voice sharp enough to echo across the hall. Ethan blinked, startled by the sudden outburst. But then, to his own horror, he chuckled again. He had no idea why she was embarrassed, but something about the moment, her proud stance mixed with that very unproud wagging tail, struck him as strangely endearing. Behind the princess, one of the armored guards covered her mouth to hide a grin. Ethan caught the movement from the corner of his eye. Clearly, this was not the first time the princess's tail had betrayed her. Ethan straightened himself awkwardly, cleared his throat, and tried to regain some dignity. But the image of the proud alien princess clutching her wagging tail was burned into his mind. He suspected he was never going to live this down. The rest of the hall remained tense after Sylara's outburst, but Captain Vera, the tall bodyguard who had tried to stifle her laugh, stepped forward with a graceful bow. Her expression was calm, though her eyes glittered with amusement. "Princess Sylara will guide you through our customs," she announced formally, though Ethan could swear she was speaking more to tease the princess than to inform him. "You will learn directly from her hand." "Consider it an honor," Ethan swallowed. He was not sure if honor was the right word. Judging by the fire in Sylara's eyes as she glared at him, this felt more like punishment. Still, he nodded quickly. "Thank you, Your Highness, honey," he said. His voice cracked a little. Sylara exhaled slowly, releasing her tail and smoothing her armor as if nothing had happened. Her steps were sharp and precise as she walked past him, motioning for him to follow. Ethan trailed after her, trying not to stare, but failing miserably. She carried herself with a regal grace, yet that small moment of vulnerability kept replaying in his mind. They entered a long corridor lined with carved metal pillars. Strange holograms shimmered between them, depicting Seraph victories from centuries past. Ethan tried to focus on them, but the silence between him and the princess was unbearable. Finally, desperate to break it, he reached into the small pouch slung across his shoulder. "Would you like to try something from Earth?" he asked carefully. Sylara's steps slowed. She turned her head slightly, one elegant brow raised. What could you possibly offer that our empire does not already possess? Ethan unwrapped a small square of chocolate. The rich scent drifted through the corridor. He held it out with a faint smile. Chocolate. Sweet, smooth, made from the beans of a plant back home. Humans love it. You might too. Her eyes narrowed suspiciously. You think I would eat a strange lump of dark matter from a human pouch? He shrugged. Only if you are brave. That struck her pride like an arrow. The princess's chin lifted at once. With a sharp motion, she plucked the chocolate from his hand and popped it into her mouth, chewing with regal determination. The flavor hit her instantly. Her eyes widened in shock. The subtle bitterness, the sweetness, the way it melted. It was unlike anything her people had cultivated. She quickly tried to school her face back into neutrality, but her tail betrayed her. It wagged once, then twice. Then it began to swish furiously, curling and uncurling like a flag caught in a storm. Ethan's lips twitched as he fought back laughter. So, you like it? Her blush deepened to a dangerous shade. She snapped her head away, clutching her tail once more. Do not stare, human, Captain Vera coughed behind them. Ethan glanced back and saw the guard's shoulders shaking with silent laughter. From that moment on, it seemed impossible for Ethan to avoid causing trouble. When he admired the intricate patterns carved into Sylara's ceremonial armor, her tail flicked and twitched as if it had a mind of its own. When he tripped during a training drill and accidentally caught her arm to steady himself, her tail whipped so violently it nearly knocked over a ceremonial vase. And every time without fail, she would whirl on him, cheeks burning, voice rising. Do not stare, human. By the third incident, Ethan noticed the other courtiers whispering. Some covered their mouths, pretending to hide smiles. Others leaned close, muttering with curious expressions. He could not understand all their words, but the glances they cast at him and the princess were unmistakable. Captain Vera, ever watchful, murmured to him when Sylara stormed ahead. You may not know it, but among our people, the tale is expressive. Some might say, too expressive. Many will see her reactions to you as a sign. A sign of what? Ethan asked cautiously. Vera smirked. That the princess has chosen you as her companion. Ethan nearly tripped again. Companion? As in, bonded, yes. The guard chuckled softly. Life bonded. Ethan froze. The thought was so absurd it almost made him laugh out loud. Him, an ordinary human assistant, paired with a princess of the Seralith Empire? Surely the universe had more sense than that. But when he looked ahead, Sylara's stiff posture and blazing cheeks made him wonder if she had heard the whispers too. And judging by the furious wag of her tail, maybe, just maybe, she was not as angry as she pretended to be. By the next day, Ethan realized something had shifted aboard the royal vessel. Wherever he walked, eyes followed him. Courtiers in shimmering robes paused in their conversations when he entered. Guards exchanged glances, their mouths twitching as if holding back laughter. Even servants in plain garb whispered behind their hands when he passed. He did not understand their language perfectly, but he caught enough to know the word companion was being repeated again and again. The first time it happened, he dismissed it. The second time, he felt uneasy. By the third, when a pair of noblewomen openly giggled as Sylara walked past with her tail swishing furiously, he knew the rumors had taken root. The princess did not make it any easier. She tried to keep her tail under control, wrapping it tightly around her waist like a belt whenever she could. But the problem was simple. Ethan existed. And for some reason, every time he opened his mouth, something slipped through her defenses. It was not always intentional. Once he offered her a small packet of dried strawberries from Earth. Another time, he complimented the way the gems on her armor reflected the starlight. Both times her tail betrayed her, and both times she snapped the same furious words. Do not stare, human. But Ethan noticed something different now. Her voice was sharp, but not quite as sharp as before. Her blush lingered longer, her eyes darted away more quickly, and sometimes, just sometimes, the corners of her lips trembled, like she was fighting a smile. Captain Vera noticed too. The loyal guard never said much in public, but when she accompanied Ethan down one of the long hallways, she leaned close and whispered, You do realize she does not dislike you, yes? Ethan nearly dropped the datapad he was carrying. What? She spends half her time shouting at me. That is because you make her feel something she cannot control. For her, that is worse than any insult. And yet, she does not tell you to leave. Ethan blinked. He had no response. The idea that Princess Sylara, daughter of the High Matriarch, felt anything other than annoyance toward him was ridiculous. She was a figure of grace, royalty, and strength. He was an awkward human who could not bow properly without nearly breaking his nose. And yet, he could not deny that he had started to enjoy her company. Beneath all the formality, beneath the sharp words and blazing blushes, there was something strangely human about her. She wanted to appear flawless. She wanted to hide her tail. She wanted to be untouchable. But every time her tail wagged, it reminded him that even alien princesses had hearts that could stumble. The rumors grew bolder as the days passed. Ethan overheard nobles speculating that the princess had finally found her chosen mate. One whispered that it was a diplomatic strategy, a way to bind Earth and the Seralith Empire closer together. Another suggested it was fate, written in the stars. Sylara denied it every time she heard it. Her voice rose, her face burned violet, and her tail wrapped tightly around her waist as if to strangle the rumor itself. But denial only made the whispers louder. At one point, when a young courtier dared to bow to Ethan and call him honored companion, Sylara's entire body froze. Her tail lashed once, then twice, before she stormed down the hall so quickly that Ethan had to jog to keep up. When he finally caught her outside one of the observation decks, she whirled on him, her eyes blazing. "Do you hear them? Do you hear what they say?" Her voice trembled with anger, but there was something else beneath it. Fear. "They speak as if you. No, this cannot be." Ethan raised his hand slowly. "Princess, I did not start the rumors. I did not even understand them until Vera explained. I am not trying to cause trouble." Her breath came fast. She pressed both hands against her tail, as if holding it still by force. "Then why does this happen?" she whispered. "Why does my body betray me whenever you are near?" For once, Ethan did not laugh. He met her gaze and spoke quietly. "Maybe because you do not need to be perfect around me." Sylara's eyes widened. Her blush spread like wildfire, and despite her grip, her tail gave one small, undeniable wag. She spun away at once, voice sharp again. "Do not stare, human." But Ethan could not stop himself this time. He smiled, because deep down he finally understood. She was not truly angry at him. She was angry at herself for feeling something she had never been allowed to feel before. And if the wag of her tail was any sign, those feelings were only growing stronger. The rumors reached their peak by the time the royal vessel anchored near the twin moons of Cyrillus. Courtiers who once kept their whispers quiet now spoke openly in the halls. Some bowed to Ethan in exaggerated politeness. Others gave him smug nods, as if he had already secured his place beside the princess. Ethan wanted to crawl into the nearest airlock and vanish. He had never been the center of attention in his life. On Earth, he was the man who fetched coffee and scheduled meetings. Here, he was being treated like the secret consort of an alien princess. It made his stomach twist with nerves every time another noble smirked at him. Princess Sylara, however, had it worse. Every room she entered fell silent, then erupted with sly smiles and knowing glances. No matter how straight she held her back, no matter how firm her voice when she denied the rumors, her tail always betrayed her when Ethan was near. A flick here, a wag there, and the court only grew more certain. At a council gathering, an elderly noble leaned on his cane and chuckled. "Ah, young love blooms, even across the stars. The High Matriarch will be pleased." Sylara nearly dropped her ceremonial staff. "There is no love," she shouted, her face burning violet. "He is a human assistant, nothing more." But when Ethan nervously placed a hand on her shoulder to steady her, her tail wagged so violently that two servants gasped. Captain Vera pressed a fist against her mouth, shoulders shaking with silent laughter. That was the moment Ethan realized the situation was spiraling out of control. And yet, despite the chaos, he could not help feeling a strange warmth when Sylara looked at him with wide eyes, her cheeks flushed, her tail trembling. She was supposed to be untouchable, But with him, she was not. The whispers soon reached the ears of Lord Kaelor. Kaelor was everything Ethan was not, tall, broad-shouldered, and dressed in armor encrusted with jewels. He walked with the confidence of someone born to command, his scaled skin polished to a shine, his long tail swishing behind him like a banner of pride. He was a noble of high rank and one of Sylara's most persistent suitors. When he heard that a human assistant had become the focus of the princess's attention, his pride burned like fire. To him, it was an insult, an embarrassment, a challenge. So when the grand banquet was announced, Kaelor saw his chance. The hall was alive with music and light. Tables groaned under the weight of delicacies from across the empire. Nobles laughed, drank, and watched the princess with eager eyes. Sylara sat at the center beside her mother's empty throne, regal and calm on the surface, but restless beneath. Her tail wrapped tightly around her leg like a coiled serpent. Ethan sat lower, among the visiting delegates, trying not to draw attention. He focused on the strange dishes in front of him, none of which he could pronounce. For a few blessed minutes, it seemed like the banquet would pass without incident. Then Lord Kaelor rose. He strode to the center of the hall, his jeweled armor glittering under the lights. His voice boomed, carrying across the chamber. Is this what the Seralith Empire has come to? That our beloved princess sits beside whispers of a fragile pet from Earth? The room fell silent. Every eye turned to Sylara, then to Ethan. Silara's face flared violet with rage. Lord Kaelor, you insult not only my guest, but the honor of the exchange itself. But Kaelor pressed on, his voice dripping with scorn. A guest? Number. This human is treated as more than a guest. You let him walk at your side. You let him touch you. And your tale, your tale tells the truth, your words cannot. Sylara froze, mortified. Her tail twitched once under the table, a tiny, involuntary motion. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Ethan's hands clenched on the edge of the table. He had been laughed at plenty of times in his life. He could take it. But seeing Sylara humiliated like this made something inside him snap. He pushed his chair back and stood. His voice was not loud, not commanding, but it carried because it was steady. You call me fragile, Lord Kaelor, Ethan said, his gaze fixed firmly on the towering noble. And you might be right. I am not strong like your warriors. I am not graceful like your nobles. But if strength is measured by pride alone, then perhaps your empire is weaker than you think. Gasps echoed through the hall. Kaelor's eyes narrowed dangerously. Ethan pressed on, his voice growing stronger. Where I come from, loyalty is worth more than power. Kindness is worth more than pride. And if your court laughs at a princess for showing her feelings, then maybe you are not as noble as you claim. The silence that followed was absolute. Every noble froze, eyes wide, waiting for Sylara's reaction. Her tail, hidden beneath the table, began to wag, slowly at first, then faster, then so wildly that the tablecloth shifted with each movement. Sylara did not hide it this time. She rose to her feet, her chin high, her tail lashing proudly for all to see. The court erupted in gasps. For the Seralith, this was no small gesture. It was a declaration, a choice. Ethan looked at her, startled, but she did not glance away. For the first time, she let her body speak for her, and the message was clear. The hall was silent except for the rhythmic swish of Sylara's tail. It moved like a banner of triumph, open and proud, refusing to be hidden any longer. Every noble present stared in shock. Some gasped, others whispered rapidly to one another, their jeweled sleeves fluttering as they covered their mouths. This was no small display. For a Seralith princess to allow her tail to wag freely in public meant something only one way. It was a declaration of affection, a choice made in front of the empire. Captain Vera broke the silence first. Her lips curved into a sly smile as she stepped forward. The court has its answer, she said softly, but her voice carried. Our princess has spoken without words. Lord Kaelor's face twisted with fury, his hands clenched at his sides. But he could not challenge what everyone had witnessed. If he dared to argue, he would be defying the princess herself. He turned sharply, his jeweled armor clattering as he stormed out of the banquet hall, his pride shattered. The nobles rose to their feet, murmuring with awe. Some bowed deeply toward Sylara, others whispered of destiny, of unexpected unions, of alliances forged not by politics, but by truth of heart. The whispers that once embarrassed her now became proclamations of respect. Sylara stood tall at the center of it all. Her cheeks glowed violet, her tail wagged furiously, but her eyes, those fierce, brilliant eyes, were steady as they met Ethan's. For the first time, she did not try to hide. Ethan's chest tightened as he looked at her. He remembered the awkward bow, the chocolate, the laughter, the countless times she had shouted at him not to stare. All of it had led to this moment. He leaned slightly toward her, his voice low but firm enough for her to hear. "Guess I was not supposed to stare," he said with a small grin, "but I like it when you do that." Silara's breath caught. Her blush deepened into a radiant shade of violet that spread across her cheeks and down her neck. Her tail wagged so wildly it nearly knocked over a goblet on the banquet table. And this time, she did not say the words. She did not tell him to stop. She did not snap in embarrassment. She simply let her tail move, open and honest, as her eyes softened in a way no Seralith courtier had ever seen before. The hall erupted in applause, not polite or formal, but thunderous and alive. Nobles stamped their feet, guards struck their spears against the floor, and the music swelled again, louder and prouder than before. For the first time in her life, Princess Sylara did not care what they thought. She did not care about perfection or appearances. She let herself feel. Ethan, the human assistant who never should have been here in the first place, smiled at her, and for a moment the entire galaxy felt smaller, kinder, closer. And as the celebration roared around them, Sylara's tail wagged with joy, free and unstoppable, a silent confession that needed no translation.